Hello, friends. Welcome to another episode of Book Blessed and Busy. Today, we want to talk a little bit about grief and the difficulty of sacrifice. But before we get started, I have a question for y'all. So, if you had to choose a color that described your day, what would that color be?
For me, that color would be a light blue with a little smidge of black in there.
Drinique, isn't that a color already? Isn't that
No, it's not.
Like a
no, it's
navy
not.
blue?
No, it's not. No,
Wow,
it's
wow,
not.
wow. I think if you look at the little colored
No, you
it's a
trying to
color.
make my whole day navy, and I'm saying that there was little pieces in there that was navy.
Polka
That
dots.
was black.
Freudian slip.
So, Dernique, what you trying to say? You got polka dots.
You
got
know
polka
what?
dots in your
let's
blue.
just say there was a polka dot action going on today, but the devil did not win, and most of my day was this light blue, airy color. It was just good. It was a good day.
What did that
Bouncy.
light blue represent? And what did those streaks represent?
You really gonna therapize me on?
I mean, it wasn't my intention.
podcast?
But, it was my intention.
She gonna expose you in the streets.
Yes.
It was a general
Yeah,
feel for it.
the lighter colors was just. I think most times I have really good days. So like the lighter colors was just going along with my work day, going along with school type of thing. The darker colors were the hiccups in my day where there were just some things that I had to solve or fix, or I had to go in meetings about, or just delegate out. So yeah, that's the little polka dots in my day.
I'm vibing with you.
Does that make sense?
I'm picking up what you're putting down.
It's the therapist.
Yeah, you're gonna, the infamous.
You gotta feel
Wow.
it. You feel it in your soul.
Right.
Wow.
But anyway, back to you now, since you don't put me on
To me.
the spot, and then we'll hit the nail to finish this up with our colors.
Okay, so I think for me, I envision like a green, like a light green. And I guess the reason for that, I've been in a place of kind of like some areas of stuckness. Is that a word? I don't know if that's a word. But I've been in some areas of feeling stuck in spaces with my clients right now. And so, but we finally have found a path. And so the green is like the pathway that we're finding and kind of getting into a groove of things. We're also getting in that point of the semester where we can kind of get into the groove of things in our therapy work. So the green path just signifies that. And we praise God for the journey.
I mean, progress.
Movement.
So you had no black in your day, you telling me?
Honestly, not really.
That's so lovely, Danielle.
You know?
I've been thinking about this because when you first asked the question, I was like, I think green, right? That a nice like middle ground. But then I think the more that the day went on, it moved from like a leaf green to like an olive green. Not that it's
darker.
bad. I think it's just like, I don't know. You know, the things in the day that bring the smidge of darkness. It's not dark, like I'm not like sad or anything like that. Just the smidge of life that kind of taints the nice, bright, vibrant green.
So it sounded like your green started to rot a little.
Wow, rot?
That's a word.
No. Can we say that my day needed a little bit more water?
Okay, sorry.
To come back to being vibrant.
It needs to be
My
rejuvenated.
leaves are a little bit dry
Let's
today.
do that. I'm sorry.
My gosh.
Just coming for you.
My gosh, rot.
Yeah, so this is a technique, I guess, or thing that we can do with either ourselves or just with clients sometimes. When there's a difficult experience of like trying to figure out how you feel, you can do that through colors and help yourself to kind of navigate through what all of that kind of feels and that engages with. But in light of what we're about to talk about today,
That's why I feel olive green. That right there.
That's why you feel the olive
That's why I
green.
feel olive green. Is knowing that this topic right here is coming.
Yeah, we're talking grief.
We can just let that sit for a minute.
Yeah.
Put that on the table and just let it sit for a second. Yeah, this has been something that, in a very interesting way, it was easily a topic that we were all able to identify with, although we're at different stages in the game. It's been a thing that's hit us in multiple different ways. And not just grief. Okay, because we know that there's different types of grief, right? So we're not talking about necessarily the grief of losing loved ones. We're not necessarily talking about that kind of like mourning that happens, but more so the grief that comes in the difficulty of sacrifice. A lot of what we've been talking about in previous episodes is like, what is the experience of having to set boundaries, and the experience of just even, working through imposter syndrome and identity and all of those things. And I think what we have been fully able to identify is that in the process, like, grief has been a big part of this for all of us. And the fact that this time of our lives demands a level of sacrifice that, sometimes can be painful. It comes with a lot of, different things.
Yeah, I think as you kind of talk about that, Danielle, I want to bring up just a general understanding of what grief looks like. Grief is just simply a natural response to loss. And as we talked about the different sacrifices in the previous episode that we've had to make during our journeys of life and coming into our own and all the different aspects of who we are as people, we recognize that there's an experience there. There's a reaction that happens when we lose something. And sometimes sacrifice elicits that element of loss. Mm-hmm. And so today, I'm wondering from y'all, as you've kind of been maneuvering through this season, this journey of life, how have you been interacting with the concept of grief? How have you identified loss? And how have you kind of wrestled through that in the midst of sacrifice?
Mm-hmm. I think my first experience with grief that wasn't a family member was grieving the dream that I had to go to Penn State. That was a huge dream for me. Mm-hmm. I mean, from like 10th grade, I was like, this is my school, right? And so I don't think I even understood what it meant to grieve a lost dream until maybe about a year ago, where I realized like that whole time, my freshman year, I was grieving that dream. So I think that's my first experience with something that wasn't the loss of a family member. Mm-hmm. But even there are experiences where I've grieved friendships and physical connections and different situations like that, where, I just was like, whoa, I'm actually grieving this process, or I can't put words to how I feel in this process. I just know it's sad, but at this time we have to move on. And so we just keep going. So yeah, like that's my first two experiences where I'm like vivid, realizing I was grieving.
You mentioned something really interesting. You said your whole first year at Lee, you were still grieving Penn State. What does that look like to, I guess, be at one school that you obviously decided to come to and be grieving a school that you dreamed of going to and decided against?
That looks like not fully engaging. That looks like, well, my parents don't know this, but I definitely looked up transfer paperwork.
Wow.
Now they know.
Now they know. Yeah, like I think the biggest thing was not being fully present. So there were moments where I definitely enjoyed my freshman year experience. I'm not gonna lie about that. Like the friendships I've made my freshman year, we are definitely lifelong friends to this day. But there was still a part of me that felt like I was supposed to fulfill this dream that I had. And because it wasn't being fulfilled, I was like, what am I doing? Like, am I in the right place? Am I allowing other people to make decisions for me? Should I have already taken this initiative myself? Well, my plan was to just wait it out here for a year and then dip.
I mean, you had the transfer papers ready to go.
However, that obviously, God obviously had other plans, because I definitely think Lee for me was a God move. And thank you, Daddy. I'm just gonna give you public.
You better let him know.
Wow.
Yeah, because
he takes credit.
He does take credit, and he is the one who definitely was like, you know what, this is a good move for you. And your parents too. Your parent, Gelisa, that is, her parents definitely pushed me in this direction.
I'm sure Angie was a big part of that.
Yes, but
shout out, mommy.
Yeah, that just not being present, I would say, was that year-long process for me. And there was some nights of crying, but I was okay though.
Listen,
That was
Tears get real.
yes, I was okay. That's what I say. By the time I get around to my sophomore year, I was like, you know what? I gonna be here. Let me just do what I gotta do. Let me just engage. That completely changed my mindset of being here. I mean, I must join everything that sophomore year.
I mean, go from grieving to embracing.
To embrace it.
To busy.
And it was okay. Like, looking back now, I'm like, it was okay that I had to grieve that year.
Yeah. You talk about crying. My grief definitely looks like lots of tears concerning Lee. I remember I was about to graduate from the master's program. I mean, there were tears in the master's program too, but in the most recent transition, I was about to graduate and I was like, okay, I'm gonna move, I'm gonna go to Atlanta, I'm gonna work, live my best life out in the diverse streets of Atlanta, Georgia. And then was praying and really like, God, what in the world? I need clarity before I make a decision. And I had a conversation with a professor that was life-changing. I went into the conversation really chill, and by the time the conversation was done, I was like, oh crap, I'm supposed to be doing the PhD at Lee. And I was just so distraught. I remember like within hours I went home. And y'all, I am not a crying person, right? Y'all know that the chances of me crying are very slim. But you see that night, I went in my closet and I sat there and I tried to pray, and all I could do was cry. I just cried on the closet floor. And I called a friend of mine and I was like, I just need you to pray. And she prayed. And I was just distraught. And so I got up the next day and I called my mother and told her about what had ensued the night before. And you know when you go to your parents with these things and you're expecting like it's okay.
Comfort.
Yes. And it was like, I was expecting like it's okay, you don't have to do that, blah, 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 blah. And my mother basically was like, yeah, why not? And I was like, this is not no, this is not what I was calling you for. But okay. So as she was talking to me, I was headed out the door and I decided to go find another professor that I mentioned earlier in the episodes, Dr. Williams. And I remember I sat in her office and she was like, yes, Danielle, like, I agree. This is a great thing. Like, I'm so excited for you. Let's do it. And obviously fill out the application, got into the program. But even in that journey, like a lot of the night that I was crying in the closet, it wasn't just because of PhD. Like, yes, I was overwhelmed with the master's, and the thought of doing another degree was like, oh my goodness. But again, it was a sacrifice of like, I am having to grieve the dream, as you talked about, of leaving. Mm-hmm. Like, I did not want to be in Cleveland any longer. I was like, 2020 is coming. I get to graduate and I get to leave. And then all of a sudden, I knew that I was willingly signing up for at least 3 more years here. That just, I could not fathom what that would be like. In hindsight, yes. Am I fully enjoying the experience and all things I'm doing? Yes. But that did not come without its proper portion of grief. And still some days I'm like, God, I don't understand why I'm here.
Why,
but,
Lord?
Why, Lord? In Cleveland, Tennessee. But you know what? It's been a process of just like, fine. I'm gonna just be grateful, I guess. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. What did yours look like, Elisa?
I think for me, it happened during my freshman year as well. I think it was like a significant one that I can remember. And I guess my grief in the difficulty of sacrifice looks like me grieving the sustainability and the physical support of family during my educational journey, and the sacrifice of leaving home and moving to another country. Mm-hmm. I knew that I wanted to study psychology since I was like 12. And as I looked for different universities, either in the United States or I looked in Canada, I didn't, in my mind, I was all hot up to just kind of leave home, if I'm being honest. But I didn't really like sit down and like contemplate to myself, like, what is this going to look like? What is it going to require of me? How is it going to shift my support system? And it rocked my world during my freshman year. I remember the night when my mom set me up in my dorm and she left. And I was like, my mom was starting to get like a little sentimental and stuff. And I was like, it's okay. We're going to talk on the phone. We're going to be fine. But then I went in my dorm and I was like, yo, this woman really want to leave me in these people country? Like, I am here alone. Well, not really alone because my cousins were here. But I'm going to be here. I'm figuring this thing out on my own. And you know, going away to school, being an international student is truly a blessing because it gives you a lot of space to really come into your own, to identify ways to just grow without necessarily having to be coddled or your hand being held, all that kind of stuff by parents or whatever. And I was able to learn how to, and I guess this is my growing pain in it, is that I had to learn how to support myself well, without the physical support of my parents, without the normalcy of, or the natural belonging feeling that you feel when you're home in your country. Like in the Bahamas, I don't have to change I don't have to feel like I have to code switch or, you know, have to wonder how people are perceiving me because I'm the only Black person in the class, you know, all of those different kinds of things I didn't have to think about. But then now, because of the sacrifice I was making, I'm now grieving that comfort of home. And I remember every time I went home on Christmas break, the minute I walk outside the airport, I could smell the air. I could smell the sea from the outside all the way by the airport. It was a life-changing experience every time going home.
Hot though, hot.
It was hot, my God, you won't lie. Especially if you go home in the winter time and you come with all your bundles on, right? So you gotta take all them layers off and then go outside because you will have heat stroke. But anyway, so I think for me, my that's a huge part of what my grief experience looked like. And emotionally, how I knew I was grieving and how I know I was dealing with a loss, it's because I began to isolate, and I did not want to go out like that. I wasn't really into meeting people. I was having a very hard time with like meeting people. What I didn't really know at that time is I probably was dealing with some anxiety as well that I didn't label. But yeah, I just struggled. I struggled a lot emotionally with trying to find my space, and I sought out my calling and whatever. My parents a lot, but my cousins who were here, I remember my cousin Jasmine, I would call her and just ask her for support in different ways to help me with that process as well. So anyhow, that's kind of how my journey has looked, and all that.
I'm realizing now that, in thinking about my own experience, you talked about freshman year, and I remember my freshman year experience. In the moment, I didn't think it through. Obviously, I wasn't thinking from a psychological mindset. But in my first semester, I think not like long cries, but I think I like shed a tear or two every night before I went to sleep for my first or most nights in my first semester. In a way that like now I'm looking back at it, I'm like, wow, Danielle, like you was really going through something. But at the time I was like, I'm just sad, but you know, I'm getting acquainted to college and being away from home and like, you know, trying to be the best version of okay that we can figure out. And now I'm like, wow, it really is a lot of transition and grieving, like the normalcy of, you know, having parents around, or the normalcy of being acquainted with the environment. Like in my experience, I wasn't coming across the country, but I was coming from New York to Tennessee, which is a very, very vast difference and large culture shock. And so having to like hear the whole, you walk fast, you talk fast, you do blah, blah, blah. It was just a lot to deal with, along with, you know, not having, like, I came down here knowing no one in the state at all. Like, I was coming to college and I was at the mercy of the university. And so, like, it is a lot to really go through and to process in the midst of it.
I used to think grieving was selfish. But let me explain why. Because I was grieving that whole year, my freshman year. And I was like, yo, I am so fortunate to be able to be in this space and to be, be at this school. And I over here like withdrawing and literally grieving the fact that I have to be here. And the question that came to me as we were all talking was, can we hold our grief in tandem with our with our successes, like, or can we hold our grief in tandem with
like happiness and joy?
Our happiness and joy? Yeah, because I was like, we grieved that whole process of being in this place, but at the same time, I think I was still very thankful that I was able to be in school. So am I able to hold them in tension? I think I'm still learning.
That's just what I ask you, but
I think at that time I definitely didn't, because I was like, you know what, I am so selfish. I cried it by myself. You are not gonna know that I was upset about being here. But
especially when you asked to be here.
Yeah, especially when yes. So I don't know. Maybe you can. And when did we learn that?
Yeah. I feel like eventually becomes a landing place, but for a long time it's a place of limbo. So I remember many times of like, all in the same day, like I'm super grateful going through class and all the things. I'm like, oh God, I'm so thankful. And then by night I'm crying, and the next morning I'm happy, and by night I'm crying. And so I think I'm thinking through this and wondering if those things get to coexist in the reflection time, but if it's hard for them to coexist in the actual moment,
like in our being.
Yeah. As much as like we reflect and we're like, yes, I'm still grateful. Or like when I'm done crying, I'm like, okay, yes, I'm so grateful to be here, but my sadness is still very real. I don't know. It's a dance.
Yeah. I think that separation or distinction you made just now is a valuable one, because in the midst of us holding our different emotional experiences, you know, it always intrigues me with negative emotions. For me personally, I always remember them a whole lot more significantly than I remember my positive emotions. Yeah. And the thing of the point of the matter is, though, is that as we were going through our different years of transition, day by day, we were having those ebb and flows of those positive and negative emotions.
Sure.
But when reflection time happened, it's like all I can remember is the negative ones.
Yes.
And so I think it requires us to allow ourselves and to give ourselves permission to think about things all encompassing, to think about things in balance, to think about the experiences that actually allowed for us to get through and that actually that kept us grounded during our transitionary periods, during those points of grief. And they may help to highlight what those complex experiences look like, because I think what Journey is touching on is the idea that grief is a very complex experience, and we hold a lot of emotion in the midst of that. And I don't think there's any kind of any kind of rubric or any kind of status quo in terms of how it should look, what emotions we should feel and what we shouldn't feel. We just simply should allow ourselves to feel it and to be able to acknowledge the good and the bad, because they both have meaning. Emotions have meaning. This is how it communicates to us what we are experiencing and how we feel impacted by what we're doing in life.
Yeah. I heard someone say one day, and I don't remember who it was, but it's a phrase that stayed with me, is that we often call grief an emotion, right? And I think more accurately in the way that this person said, grief is not necessarily an emotion. Grief is an experience that is comprised of several emotions, right? And so this person specifically highlighted it being comprised of fear, anger, and sadness. And I think generally, no matter the varying degrees of these things, that is what it comes with, right? So in us grieving the fact that we're here, it's the fear of what is to come, the sadness or anger about not being able to have what we wanted, and, just really adjusting to the transition. But again, like you've been highlighting, it is a complex experience that we get to have with a myriad of emotions involved. And so oftentimes, and I think we'll be talking about this at some point, but oftentimes this can like morph itself or evolve into a place of gratefulness. But it's, again, a requirement of this is allowing ourselves to feel all the things. Like so often I tell my clients this all the time. I don't know how or why, but the world has dictated to us that we only get to feel one thing. You only get to be happy that you're here, or you only get to be sad that you're here, or you only get to be nervous about school. And I think in all of the experiences that we have, we realize that I get to feel all of the things, right? Journey, I know you don't like this example, but in someone having a child, right? There is the experience of like, I'm really excited about being a mother or about being a parent, and I'm really nervous because I don't know what to do. In going to a new school or getting a new job or whatever, it's like, okay, I want to do really well, but I'm also like nervous or anxious or excited or, anticipatory about whatever the thing is. And so we get to have multiple emotions in grief as well. Like, I get to sit in a place of like grief and gratefulness, or like happiness and sadness, and whatever that brings before us.
If we're gonna go a little biblical, right? Just a little,
okay.
Just a little dash of biblical.
Okay,
like,
just a sprinkle,
just a little bit. There's a scripture that says we rejoice in mourning, right? Right. We gotta be right, because we all pastor's children in here. Most of us.
Oh.
Give us a minute as we pull up the rejoice in mourning. But I think there's that scripture that says we should rejoice. No, sorry. No, I have it wrong.
What are you getting at?
It's the
story.
it's
What
the
do you
idea
remember?
that we should rejoice.
Rejoice with those who rejoice and mourn with those who mourn?
No, it's the idea that when a new baby is born, we should mourn, but when
yes,
somebody dies,
yes,
we should rejoice.
Yes.
With that example, I think even in some ways, God allowed us to have two emotions in that scripture of like, obviously He knows that somebody dying is going to be sad, but there's still some level of rejoicing. So that's given us two emotions in that. Now I may not be going somewhere with this. I will let y'all take it away, but
I think you're saying that in the ways that we often have expectations for what we should feel about an experience, the fact that we get to have varying ones.
Yeah.
So in the way that we think of death and think of grief, that we should also like be able to mourn in those, rejoice in those experiences. And the fact that we shouldn't hold ourselves to a certain standard or expectation of feeling something in the midst of whatever's happening.
Boom. That's it right there.
What you getting at?
Yes.
Okay.
I just didn't put the scripture together very well. However, I will like to take this moment right here just to say we're giving everybody permission to feel their grief.
That's it. Permission.
Yeah.
Permission is a real thing.
No, for real.
No, like wholeheartedly, it's a real thing.
Like, I give you permission today to feel the grief that you feel, to feel the hurt that you feel, to feel anything that you feel. I give you permission to do that because if you didn't have it before, you have it today from the three of us. So, I think this is a good note for us to end on, to give people permission to feel. Feel the grief.
Acknowledge it.
Yes, acknowledge it.
Give it a voice.
Hold it in tandem with your successes. You
and
are
just,
allowed.
Yeah, and just hold it, period. A lot of times we try to run from these things and distance ourselves from these things. And so in you or in all of us being given permission, we get to hold these things and sit with what that means for us and live in the fullness of the experience of what it's like.
Yes. I hope that our stories today were inspiring, but also just honest enough to show you that we are all going through grief, but at the same time, we have beautiful experiences as well. And with that, we will end right here. And we are excited for these next couple of weeks, and we hope that you continue to join us in our pursuit of purpose. See you guys later.
Bye.